If you recall, I did a video talking about my liquidation store and thrift store hauls for art supplies over the course of like a year, and in my recent trip, I found a pack of Spectrum Noir Classiques for $20, and I was super excited about it and very, very tempted to go back and get more. So of course, I did. Technically, I have 36 markers now, but only 33 of them are technically usable. 3 of them were actually duplicates, but that's not a problem. Because that means if these 3 happen to dry out at any point, I will already have a replacement marker for them, meaning I don't have to run out and get any. And now that I have a much bigger set of markers than I've ever had before when it comes to alcohol markers, I want to play around a bit and actually do some like cool artistic experimentation and stuff. The set of markers that I had before was actually an artist loft set of markers, and I only had 18, and honestly I didn't have a lot of the in-between colors I would want to actually do any like proper art, but these 33 markers that I have has a decent enough range of colors that I could probably actually do a really decent piece of art. However, my experience with alcohol markers goes as far as coloring things in and playing with shading just a little bit, but I don't actually fully understand these things, and it's kind of weird because I feel like I'm starting my channel all over again. When I first started making videos about my traditional art journey, I decided to start with colored pencils. And yes, I did in fact call them pencil crayons before. That's a Canadian thing. That's actually what they were called here, but that's besides the point. It felt like I was starting to learn to draw all over again, and over the course of a few months I learned so much about shading, laying colors down, blending colors together, and honestly now I feel like I'm a very experienced colored pencil artist. Despite the fact that I haven't actually done anything in a while, I feel like I kind of reached a peak of understanding, and it was more of about the experience and actually like doing art to eventually become a pro at it. And now that I'm diving into markers, it's kind of the same thing all over again. I kind of don't know anything about any of this. In fact, for a very long time, I stored my markers like this. And anybody who's experienced in markers is probably cringing real hard at the fact that I killed 18 alcohol markers because I stored them like this in a bag for like 3 years. But my cringy art supply storage aside, I want to do something related to Spirited Away today, which this is technically going to be my first piece of fan art on the channel. So I'm a little excited, but also nervous about all the hardcore fans that might smack me if I do something wrong. Why'd I say it like that? It was like a question. Anyways, I actually heard that there's a theater company, I think in Japan, I could be wrong, that's actually doing a live action like theater play version of Spirited Away, and I saw the dragon costume or prop thing, and it's like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, I said a naughty word, but I bleeped it out. You're safe, don't worry. The big bad boogeyman that I don't know what I'm doing, okay? I'm going to refresh my memory on Spirited Away because it's been a bit since I watched it, and I'm going to do some sketches as I watch, and then I'm going to pick the one that I like the most and then change it a little bit and then do like a test sketch in one of my separate sketchbooks, and then I'm going to transfer that sketch over to my mixed media pad from Canson. So I'm going to hop off and watch the movie now. You're not going to see any of that because copyright stuff. Probably going to pull this page out of this sketchbook and then do some painter's tape around the edges just so I can kind of have a frame around it like I've done with all the other pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then we can actually get to, you know, lining it and coloring it. So I'm going to kind of skim past some of that process, but here we go. For the line work of this piece, I'm using a combination of my Le Pen 1mm fine liner, as well as this Pigma Sakura that I picked up in MB, which I assume is medium bold rather than full-on bold. And it's really cool because not only is it a pigment-based marker / pen, but it's also brush tipped, so you get varying line thicknesses based on pressure. So there's a lot of natural kind of style to the lines that comes from this. And I will admit my control of this thing is not great. Brushes are still super new to me, especially when it comes to line work. So getting a really specific thickness of line with a brush is just beyond my skill. I'm doing my best, but of course, not everything that I did was super intentional, but I just kind of rolled with it. I also tried to use the Le Pen 1mm to add some sort of wood grain to the panels of this little shed that I did, which wasn't originally planned for the piece, but I think it fits a lot better than just having Naira randomly slapped in there. And I need to get away from drawing my own characters constantly. I realize it's probably gotten a bit old. The most terrifying part about this entire project was laying down the initial first color. And that's because with something like colored pencils, you can easily put a base color down with a very light layer to get an idea as to what you're going for. And if you don't necessarily like that specific color, because you did a light layer, you can just go over top of that with another color, going a little bit heavier until you find something you like. Of course, it's not 100% forgiving, but it's a lot more forgiving than markers, where whatever color you put down on the page, it's there. You can't bleach it, you can't remove it, you just have to work with it. So it goes without saying, after finishing the first bit of color on this page, I thought it looked pretty good, although I thought it could look better, but the only thing I could really do was proceed. I thought it was a pretty good idea to fill out the sky first, because it is going to be a nighttime scene, hence the moon in the middle of the whole thing, as you'll see later, and it would make it a lot easier to decide how I contrast all the rest of the stuff in the scene if I can see how dark everything is first and how bright the moon's going to be. Plus, filling out the much larger areas first makes the piece look a little bit closer to completion, and honestly kind of gives me a lot of morale boost because I'm feeling pretty intimidated at this point. As I said before, I can't fix any of the mistakes that I make, at least not easily, so I'm trying not to make any if I can manage to, but of course that's asking a lot. Coloring the rest of Haku was quite a challenge because he is basically white. And generally when it comes to shading white stuff, I go straight to cool grays, warm grays, and some very, very light colors. But I don't have any grays. I've got no blacks, no colorless blender, no grays. So despite having 33 markers to choose from, I don't have a lot of the light colors that I would really want to use for highlights and shadows, so I had to kind of play around and be a little bit experimental with it. I suppose this entire piece is kind of experimental, but I was super worried that the colors I was using weren't going to look very good. But in the end, shading him made him actually look a lot cooler than I was expecting him to look, because he's got kind of like some fun pastel sort of shading going on, which I'm totally into, and it really does kind of make him pop out from the rest of the art. And you might disagree with me, but that's okay. We all have our opinions, even if they're wrong. I'm kidding. Art's beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. And if you don't have eyes, I don't really understand how you're watching this video. Give me your secrets. And after a week of a lot of hesitation, working on this piece very slowly so I didn't mess it up, I can finally reveal the art piece as a whole. And here it is. It didn't turn out exactly how I'd imagined it in my head, but considering this is my first full art piece with any sort of marker, I'm pretty impressed with myself, especially considering the fact that I didn't have exactly what I wanted for shading white stuff. And the pinky purple sort of pastel-y vibe on Haku looks pretty cool. And obviously there are some things I could have done a lot better, as there always is with any piece of art that I do. There's always more to learn. But despite all that, I'm very, very happy with the way it turned out. And honestly, if there's anything I can take away from this process and this journey, is if you feel like you want to try something, but you're really doubting yourself and your capabilities with that something, this should be proof that even though you're feeling very self-conscious about it and you're pretty certain you're going to fail, You just might be really happy with what you end up with, and you will always learn something new and be able to perform better the next time you try it. But with all that said, I had a lot of fun creating this, and I'm definitely going to do it again. And at some point in the future, I will buy myself a lot more packs of the Spectrum Noir markers, because these things are so fun to use. Their color is incredible, and they're pretty easy to use. They blended okay despite my lack of experience and using paper that's not really meant for blending markers. I think it still looks pretty cool. It's got sort of a style to it, although the style is very beginner who doesn't know what he's doing. But regardless of any of that, thank you guys so much for following along with me while I try something new. If you want to see more from me, you can click that subscribe button, the like button, and leave a comment on what you think I should draw next with alcohol markers, because I definitely want to include you guys in what I do on this channel a little bit more. I haven't really known how to do that. Suggestions are pretty much the only thing I can think of at this point, but in the future I'm going to do much bigger, much crazier, and maybe more expensive projects. We'll see. I mean, this is probably the most expensive project that I've taken up so far, because I had to spend $60 on markers, which doesn't seem like a lot to some people, but it's kind of big for me. I'm rambling again. I shaved half my head off. I'll see you guys next time.